Welcome to the first part of a series of special bank holiday weekend videos where I aim to teach, encourage and inspire you to get out and give it a go. The sun is out, the grass is looking a bit rough, so today we're going to start with a bit of lawn care. Yay! I'm sure I'm not the only person in the UK that gets this, but inevitably every spring I have a huge amount of weeds in my grass. Now maybe if I was ultra organised 3 months ago I would have put down some weed killer to make sure that I'm not in this position. But in January and February I just wasn't thinking about this. So we end up as usual in April with a whole multitude of weeds, and there always seems to be a lot more than on first inspection. But this year I'm using this easy weeder thing, which means I don't need to bend down, and it's just a matter of time going in there and pulling as many weeds out as you can before you even start cutting the grass. If you're really lucky, you'll be able to pull them out, including the taproot. So I must say, this is my newest best friend. I used to have the Fiskars version of a weed puller like this, but it was quite expensive and there were so many working parts that eventually, inevitably, it just broke. On this one, there's just 2 parts, so I think this is going to last a bit longer, and it's a lot cheaper. I'll stick an Amazon link in the description for this one. They're about half or a third of the price, and obviously less to go wrong, and you can see it actually works. So yeah, definitely, if you've got a lot of weeds and you don't like bending down, you need something like this. And it doesn't take very long before you end up with piles of these weeds all over the grass, a lot more than you first thought you were going to get. And this is really important. Once you've taken out all the weeds, the areas that are left, and I've made this mistake before myself, you really need to fill with some soil or compost with some seeds. If you don't, those craters that you've just created by pulling out the weeds are going to be sitting on your grass for many weeks, if not months. So just get a bit of compost, mix some seed into it and fill those craters, and within a couple of weeks that will just grow into the grass, and where you've pulled these weeds will be completely invisible. And if you've got a really bad area of weeds, this is what it's going to end up looking like. However, this is the worst it's ever going to be. Give it a few weeks, all of this will grow in and you won't be able to see these patches ever more. If you don't seed it like this, potentially it's going to look bare for the whole of the summer. The next thing you need to do is give it a really good cut. I think any lawn at this time of year benefits from a really close cut, followed by a power rake. I think it's really good to get all that old moss, all the old dead bits and pieces out of a lawn, so the new grass has got plenty of opportunity to grow and flourish. Just a word of warning at this point, whenever you power rake or scarify, expect to get a lot of debris out of your lawn. So be prepared with bags or a bin, because you're going to be surprised how much you take up. When you power rake, it's also quite important to do it from different angles. What you'll find on the second pass is you bring up as much as on the first pass. So either 90 degrees to each other or 45 degrees to each other. You really need to keep going until nothing else is coming out of that lawn. If things are looking a little bit bare at this point, it's a good idea to overseed. And all that means is add in some seed to your existing lawn. The manufacturers recommend around about 35 grams per square metre. So work out how many square metres your lawn is, multiply it by 35 grams, then you know how much to buy. There's probably different ways of doing this, but if I know how much I need to add to a certain number of square metres, then I will seed in different directions, randomly trying to cover the whole area with a number of passes until I get through all of that seed. Here's just another tip, try not to seed your borders, else all you're doing is making work for yourself when that grass comes through as weeds. So if your lawn looks a bit like mine, where it's slightly yellow and it's not really deep green, that's just showing signs of a lack of nitrogen and a lack of feed. And no amount of watering is really going to change that. So we're going to need to add some sort of feed. Now you can do this in different ways, however I still think the best way of doing it is by top dressing with some good compost. Now, it doesn't really matter what type of compost you use, but you don't want one with twigs and big lumps in it. You want something that's going to break into small parts, and with a bit of rain or watering ends up finding its way through the grass and basically adding nutrients to that top layer. You can use chemicals or some of the sort of 3-in-1 or 4-in-1 type products you can buy from the garden centre. But over the last few years, I found adding a good compost to the surface just seems to feed the grass over weeks, if not months. And you'll find after a few weeks, the grass being a lot greener rather than yellow. And that will really help the new seed that you put down as well. When you first overdress, don't put too thick a layer on. You really want to end up seeing 50% grass and 50% compost. And what you'll find is over the next week or two, with a little bit of rain or watering, is all that compost will gradually go into the ground and start doing its stuff. And here's my top tip if you're watching this on Good Friday or on Saturday. If you want to do this on Sunday, where the weather is good all around the country, be aware Sunday is one of the few days that all the shops are shut. There's nothing like driving into a B&Q's on an Easter Sunday to find the thing closed and everyone doing 180s in the car park. So if you need any seed on compost or anything like that, make sure you pick up anything you need beforehand. I think this is absolutely the perfect time of year to do this. Any earlier, the weather will be rubbish and you don't really want to work in the garden. Any later, the grass will be starting to grow like mad. And if you miss your opportunity at this point, it makes everything 10 times harder. So if you want a nice lawn, really consider doing something at this time of year. It'll pay dividends as we get into June and July. As I said, I don't think it really matters what type of compost you put on the lawn. And this year I'm trying this new one that I've come across, which is called Super Grow Organic Compost. And this comes from the range. And the reason I like this is twofold. First of all, it's really quite fine and it's got a really dark colour, which I like. And secondly, I've just bought a whole stack of these bags, and price-wise, it worked out to 4 bags for £10. That's £2.50 each for a 50-litre bag, which is about half the price of what I used to pay, which I think is a result. So I hope I've inspired you to do something with your lawn this bank holiday weekend. As I said, top tip, everything is closed on Sunday. So if you need any materials, either beforehand or first thing Monday morning. Hope you enjoyed this video. I will see you tomorrow.